If you felt like this week has been chaotic, a little bit tense, a little erratic, and if you feel like you're on the edge of something, on the precipice of something, and you're not quite sure what is happening in the cosmos, then strap in because you need to hear about what is happening on the 15th, and we are going to talk about it. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dheandra Nicolette, and on my channel, you'll find everything spirituality, lifestyle, a bit of astrology. Honestly, anything that I feel called to talk about. And today, my loves, I want to chat about this full moon in Taurus taking place on November 15th, 2024. So this full moon is really, really potent. I feel like anytime I talk about a full moon, I'm always talking about how I personally get a little bit on edge around the full moon times. I mean, it is a time of culmination, right? We look back to the previous 6 months and we look to what happened 6 months prior to this particular full moon to really understand what we planted the seeds of prior. What are we actually maybe tying up loose ends to? What are we finishing, wrapping up? What are we essentially going to be harvesting around this time? However, this full moon is a little bit more, how do I say, juicy, maybe? Like, I feel like maybe that's the best word to use here, or maybe that isn't the best word to use here, because for some of y'all, it will be kind of like juicy in the sense that it is flowing with really powerful energy that you can use to co-create something beautiful. And for some of us, it's going to be a little bit chaotic, a little bit erratic. So we have this full moon, and excuse me as I look at my phone to the chart of the day. I'll put this on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, hello, my loves. Testing out a little something new here, but you can go to the YouTube channel. My YouTube channel, I'll have it linked in the description of this podcast episode if you want visuals. But so we have the moon at 24 degrees of Taurus, while we have the sun at 24 degrees of Scorpio. The sun and the moon quite literally across from one another in the chart of the day, and the cosmos is creating what we know as the full moon. And right next to our moon at 24 degrees of Taurus, we have Uranus at 25 degrees of Taurus. And Uranus is a planet that whenever we think of Uranus, we think of disruption, we think of chaos, we think of unexpected events, right? We think of things happening that sort of disrupt maybe what we had in flow. It sort of creates this environment for things that we maybe didn't see coming to sort of come through, to penetrate, and to exist in our reality. So because we have the moon conjunct Uranus, aka the moon sitting right next to Uranus in the cosmos when this full moon is taking place, it's sort of like this energy of culmination, right, that we know the full moon typically brings to us. But there's a layer of something happening, something taking place that is quite literally unexpected for some of us. Uranus energy can come through in a multitude of different ways, because sometimes the unexpected events that happen in our lives, they're not bad. Unexpected chaos doesn't always necessarily mean it's bad. A lot of times, miracles, blessings come to us by way of things that we didn't expect. Or sometimes we have chaotic upheavals, chaotic endings, random things that take place that we're like, what is this? Why is this happening? That in the moment feels so disruptive and annoying, but it leads to something better happening for us. It leads to a new beginning, or it leads to something else down the road that also was unexpected, but would not even have the possibility of occurring had this unexpected, random, chaotic, disruptive, may I say, event happen in our lives. So disruption isn't necessarily something to fear, because when we think about things that come to life in our reality that change the course of our lives, that change the course of humanity, they're typically revolutionary type of events. They're typically disruptive, they're chaotic. And so a lot of innovation comes to us by way of disruption, right? That's why Uranus in modern astrology rules over Aquarius, for example. I think about Saturn being associated with Aquarius, but Uranus is also associated with Aquarius because Uranus is also about innovation. Disruption breeding innovation, disruption leading to futuristic inventions and new things coming about. So I say that to say that this particular full moon, while it is conjunct Uranus, or while the moon rather is conjunct Uranus, and there is this energy of chaotic disruption that might color your full moon experience, it's not to say that this disruption is bad or it is something that will be bad. Now we have other things that are happening, okay, that we're going to look at as well and interpret before I get into the rising sign breakdowns, because I have rising sign breakdowns for you guys in this video and in this particular episode. The other thing that I want to note that is taking place on November 15th is that Saturn is stationing direct. So a few weeks ago, I did on my YouTube channel a video about Saturn stationing retrograde and what that means for you during this particular time. So Saturn has been stationed retrograde for pretty much the entire summer since June. When any planet stations retrograde, it's a time of going inward. It's a time to really reflect on those particular themes that exist in your chart. So Saturn is in Pisces right now. So think about what particular house in your chart Saturn rules, what particular house in your chart Pisces rules. If you don't have any signs in Pisces, so if you don't have a Pisces sun or a Pisces rising, whatever, you still have Pisces in your chart. Rather, Pisces still rules over a house in your chart. The easiest way to figure this out without using any sort of visual tool is to think about what your rising sign is. So for example, my rising sign is Aquarius. So Aquarius would rule over my first house. Your rising sign always rules over your first house. From there, count how many signs from your sign there are until Pisces, and that will tell you what house Pisces rules over. So example, my first house is Aquarius because I'm an Aquarius rising. Pisces is the next sign after Aquarius. So Pisces rules over my second house. Let's say, for example, you are a Sagittarius rising. Sagittarius would rule over your first house. Capricorn would then rule your second house. Aquarius would rule your third house, and Pisces would rule your fourth house. So that will essentially tell you some of the themes that you have been going inward or kind of exploring as they're related to Saturn, related to boundaries, related to time in the past couple months. So with Saturn stationing direct on the same day that we have this full moon, now we might see some of this play out in a very cohesive and easy to understand way for some of us. So, again, my particular Saturn return, my Saturn sits in Pisces in my second house. So my Saturn return story, my Saturn stationing retrograde story was always about income. It was about income. It was about money, but it was also about values. How am I making money? And am I being valued in the places where I am making money? Am I being valued at my job? Am I being valued, with any of my side hustles, that kind of thing? Something is being wrapped up. Okay, if you think back to 6 months prior when we had the Taurus new moon, maybe something you planted the seeds for, what are you now what's coming to an end, coming to a close? You can also think about what particular house in your chart Taurus rules. And so for me, this would be my fourth house. This has to do with my home. This has to do with my family. It's really interesting because around this full moon, I am prepping to move. I'm thinking about moving, and not even from the sense of like, oh, I might move, I might not move. I'm literally closing the chapter on this home. That is a given. Now, where I'm going, I don't know. With this particular Uranus and moon conjunction, there is an element of this that's coloring the fact that I may get some unexpected news. Something around my move might happen, something that's unexpected, that is not something that I've prepared for. Maybe it's something like an apartment that I wasn't even considering comes onto my plate or radar. Maybe an opportunity for me to move somewhere that I wasn't even really considering comes onto my plate or radar, something like that, right? And because we also have Saturn stationing direct on that day, there's an element of this story that brings into question and into consideration something where you have to maintain and observe certain boundaries, or you have to sort of understand something in your chart as it relates to Saturnian themes. In my case, because Saturn is in my second house and that is related to money, my moving story, my moving homes, it's related to me wanting to be more responsible with my money. I want to get into the rising signs because I think this will be helpful. Let me take a sip of my coffee really quickly. This is so good. Aries rising, this full moon is taking place in your second house. So this has to do with the themes that I mentioned earlier. This is money, this is income, this is values. You could possibly be closing the chapter on a source of income for yourself. This could be an unexpected closing of a certain income source. Now, this is not like you're going to lose your job. I mean, some of you, maybe that will happen, but it could be something where there was an income source, maybe a side hustle, something like that. Some news comes to you or something happens where you are put into a position where you're like, okay, this income source is no longer viable or it no longer makes sense. Again, with Saturn sort of coloring the story, maybe it relates to you wanting to have certain boundaries, enacting certain boundaries. Maybe you've tried to set certain boundaries at work and they are not paying attention to those boundaries. They are not observing those boundaries. They're not respecting those boundaries. And as a result, you're like, you know what? I'm getting another job. I'm literally closing this particular income source and portal and I'm opening up a new one. Taurus rising, this is taking place in your first house of self. We talk about the first house a lot here, and the first house is all about your identity. It's literally appearance. It's you. It's very encompassing of who you are and how you show up in this world. So there's something that you're ending here. And like I said, because Saturn is coloring the story, for me, it's giving the vibes of you are ending the way that you are showing up in this world as it relates to boundaries. You're very much like, you know what? I have been letting people step all over me in this particular area of my life. I have not been standing up for myself enough. I have not been speaking up for myself enough. And so I want to show up much more confidently. I am about to step into sort of like this boss bish era and is giving very much you got to put your foot down and set certain boundaries. And some people, unfortunately, Taurus, are not going to be happy with those boundaries, but you know, it's giving very much that's a them problem, not a you problem. Gemini rising, this is taking place in your 12th house. This is the house of the subconscious, but this house also has to do with like mental health. So something around your healing journey, you're kind of wrapping up, maybe something around letting go of a past trauma that has been haunting you for a little bit. Again, it could be setting certain boundaries around that particular trauma and how you're refusing to go back. Like, it's kind of like I am stepping forward, I'm moving forward in my life, and I do not want to revisit this. Like, I have moved on, I've healed from it. I don't need to revisit this any longer. And this particular full moon is really allowing you to close that chapter because it is necessary. It is so necessary for your healing, for your subconscious, and for your mental health. Cancer rising, this is taking place in your 11th house. So this is the house of social circles, networks, community. For some of y'all, there might be an unexpected event that shifts the dynamic within your community, within your friend group, within your circles. It could even be something where you're cutting off certain people or friends, but it could literally be you're cutting off a certain dynamic, a certain way that you're relating to your community, or maybe you're ending a certain chapter with a community that you have participated in and been a part of for the last couple of months, maybe even the last couple of years since Saturn has been in Pisces, and you're kind of like, you know what, it's time to wrap this up. It's no longer serving me, or maybe it served its purpose for you and you're ready to sort of move on to whatever that next stage you perceive to be for your network and for your community. Leo rising, this is taking place in your 10th house. This is giving the vibe of walking away from a certain career or a certain passion as it relates to like the public eye that you've been pursuing that no longer feels right to you. It might come by way of something unexpected. So maybe something happens, a conversation, a random event that really sheds light on the fact that this particular thing is not the vibe for you anymore. And it feels like, again, it's related to boundaries in some way. So maybe you're realizing that in order for you to really observe certain boundaries in your life, you have to let go of this particular job, this particular career path. Maybe you're deciding to completely embark on a whole new career path. And this is really like the time where you're starting to close up certain chapters, close up certain stories, certain sequences with this career path or this certain passion that you've been pursuing for the last couple of months. Virgo rising, this is taking place in your ninth house. So ninth house does have to do with international travel. So for some of y'all, maybe you've been traveling abroad and it's finally coming to an end. You've been backpacking across a certain continent or something, and you're finally deciding to end that and go home. You're like, you know what, this has been fun. I'm wrapping this up. But for some of y'all, this also has to do with beliefs, because expansion and travel is not just physical, it's also on a mental and spiritual plane as well. So for some of y'all, you're literally letting go of and closing the chapter on certain beliefs that you have held in your life, held for the past couple months, that no longer resonate. Maybe I didn't give this type of way of thinking enough thought, or maybe I no longer resonate with like this particular, belief in spirituality, or this particular belief in my religion. And you're really allowing yourself to shift directions as it relates to your beliefs, which can be really hard because a lot of times we have those things tied to our core identity, who we feel we are. So this is kind of a major shift for you, but it does feel very kismet. And it also feels, again, like it's related to certain boundaries that you are enacting for yourself in this next chapter of your life. Libra rising, this is taking place in your 8th house. So 8th house is all about sort of big money. When I say big money, I literally mean loans, debts, big things like that. So for some of y'all, you might be finishing off, paying off a loan, paying off a debt, but it also feels like there's a major transformation that's sort of coming to a close, because 8th house rules major transformation. It's a Scorpio house. And so this could literally be that you were on a really big transformation all year. You were really diving deep into who you are, into what your beliefs are, maybe even diving deep into certain new occult practices, diving deeper into manifestation rituals, into tarot, into certain things that you are really feeling called to explore. And now it's getting to a place where you're almost coming out of your cocoon. I'm getting the vision of literally the caterpillar in the cocoon, and now you are getting ready to emerge. And in order to emerge, the caterpillar has to end its cycle as a caterpillar before it becomes a butterfly. So this is giving the vibe of you getting ready to emerge. You're finalizing a really major part of your transformation. It's almost like, y'all know how people have been talking about winter arc. I feel like you are ahead of the game with your winter arc. You've been on an autumn arc type vibes. You literally have been doing this work and really embarking on major transformation before winter arc was even a thing. And now for you, you're starting to see the results of all of that work that you've been putting in. Scorpio rising, this is in your 7th house. And for some of y'all, this is an unexpected end to a really close relationship. So it could be a romantic relationship. It could be a really close friend. Something happens that shakes you, and it's related to boundaries. That person is not observing and respecting certain boundaries that you've enacted for the relationship. You're deciding to call it quits. Maybe something comes to light about that person, or something's recently come to light about that person that's made you realize that this relationship probably isn't the best for you, and it ends up having to be an end, or there's an end to a dynamic that you have in the relationship. So maybe it doesn't end completely, but a certain dynamic has to end in order for you to feel like you're being respected, and in order for you to feel like your boundaries are being respected. And so something is shifting on a major level with your relationships, with a close relationship. Sagittarius rising, this is happening in your 6th house. So 6th house is our day-to-day routines, it's health and wellness. I see for y'all that you are finally deciding to end some really toxic cycles as it relates to your health and wellness, and also your work life. For some of y'all, this is literally you just have not been observing true work-life balance. You've been overworking yourself. You have been just doing way too much, or perhaps it's the other way where you literally have not been working enough, and you've been kind of laissez-faire, really just kind of lazy, not on your grind. And so now you're you know what? I gotta step it up. Okay. We're getting into you wanting to set certain goals for who you want to be, how you want to show up on a day-to-day level, how you want to show up in your life. It really is for you. You are closing the chapter on a certain toxic cycle where you were not respecting your own boundaries around how you need to show up for your health and your wellness. And also some of this may be related to pets for some of y'all. So ending a certain chapter with a pet Capricorn rising, this is taking place in your 5th house. It could be ending a certain cycle in your dating life. So maybe you're deciding that you really want a certain type of partner, and that means that you're going to have to enact certain boundaries when it comes to what you're looking for in a partner. Because as Saturn goes direct, we're kind of coming out from that sitting, with ourselves and thinking about what are the boundaries and yada, yada, yada. And now we're like, okay, we move. Like, we have figured it out. We have gotten clarity. How do you actually put that into action? So you're figuring out where you need to set certain boundaries in your dating life. You're also coming through with, ending certain hobbies and getting ready to pick up new hobbies. Or perhaps this is an ending of you holding yourself back from your own creative expression. You have not been really allowing your inner child to play. And you're finally getting to that point where you're like, you know what? Like, I need that for me. I need to be able to allow myself to express and to create and to cultivate in the way that feels aligned with me. And so you're letting go of a chapter of yourself, a chapter of your life where you were not fully allowing yourself to express that creativity. Aquarius rising, I mentioned this earlier, but this is 4th house, which is family and home. Some of y'all, like myself, are going to be moving soon. You are exploring your opportunities for moving, whether you're staying in the same state as you are now or the same country, or you're moving to a completely new state, a completely new country. You are evaluating what it is you need for your home, what it is you need to feel safe at home. This also has to do with family dynamics. So what could be coming up right now is, are people in your family actually respecting a certain boundary that you've enacted? Are people in your family actually showing up in a way that you need them to show up in? Or do you need to be more vocal about boundaries within your family dynamics? That can be tricky, of course, and depending on how it relates to your home life, it could be even trickier, more complex, but that's what's coming forth right now. Something with boundaries, something unexpected with home, and you're literally moving. If you're not moving around this time, within the next couple months, you'll be moving, or within the next year, you're going to be moving. Pisces rising, this is in your 3rd house. So this is communication. This is literally something to do with you ending a cycle of how you are communicating your boundaries, communicating your desires. Similar to, I forget what other sign had, something similar to this, but you have not been vocalizing enough what it is you need, what it is you want, what it is you actually want to set boundaries around, what you value. You're going to be called to express yourself in a certain way. And for some of y'all, you're ending a certain cycle of expressing yourself in a certain way. Perhaps you had a podcast before, you had a YouTube channel before, and now you're kind of in a space where that no longer resonates. You're deciding to change, or you're letting go of the podcast to start a YouTube. You're letting go of the YouTube to start a podcast. You're writing a book. You're leaving behind TikTok. You're starting a TikTok. There's something around shifting your expression of voice and your expression of self. So that, my loves, is your full moon in Taurus breakdown. Again, this is taking place on November 15th. Come back and comment below. Let me know what this full moon story shows up as for you. I'm super curious if your rising signs resonate. And I would be super curious to know in the next couple months, how do these things shake up? What comes through with that Uranus conjunction? Is there even anything unexpected that comes forth for you? Because we also have this Pluto and Mars opposition at the same time. There's a lot of tense energy right now. So it could be something where we're all feeling just sort of on edge, tense, chaotic, overwhelmed. And the way that this energy shows up could be something that shakes up our entire reality in, again, an unexpected way. Thank you so much, my loves, for tuning in to this video, to this episode. I will chat with y'all in the next one, and I will see you in a next video. Bye, my loves.